for the lockout, your company made less than the adequate profit or it made the losses when you look at the financial statements. But when you make an adjustment for that extraordinary event of the lockout for 2 months, for which you incurred the fixed overheads in the form of depreciation, it could be in the form of whatever those fixed overheads, reduce it from your profit and loss statement and rework your profit and loss statement. This is what the adjustment what I am talking about. Or if you have a transaction, international transaction, not necessarily with the related parties, and as a result of that, there is a foreign exchange fluctuation which is coming in. It could be gain, it could be loss. Make adjustment for that, because when you do a transfer pricing analysis, basically it will be profit. Then the profit is never a PBT. The profit is always PBIT, or what they call it as an operating profit or the operating income. And the foreign exchange fluctuation is not an operating expenditure or an operating income. Make adjustment for that. So such kind of adjustments are required to improve the comparability standards. Do that and see where you stand. So once comparables, in general, as I said, I will repeat. From an STD perspective, my experience so far is internal comparables are the best comparables. And especially when you have my previous speaker also mentioned about ATI 8 or ATI 10 kind of transaction. There it's very difficult to get the comparable third party because you do not know how much profit or the loss that particular undertaking of a third party comparable company is making, because it's not available in the public information. So look for the income. Internal comparability would be a mantra for all of you. And therefore, what you need to look at, some of the important factors when you look at the comparability analysis, especially if you are selecting the methods. And these are the price methods, which could be 3 price methods what they talk about: comparable and controlled price method, or the resale price method, or the cost plus. Where the name itself suggests it revolves around the price. So if you are doing that, especially if you are using CUF as a method, these 5 steps are very, very critical to look at. Product similarity. If this is a cross trend which I am selling it to the related party and unrelated party, there is a product similarity. There may be a slight difference in the product similarity. This is gold and I may be selling it only the silver to the related party. Doesn't matter, but there is a product similarity. But if I am distributing cross trend to the related party and link pen to the unrelated party, that is not the correct comparison. Both are pens, but that is not correct comparison. Then where you stand as a part of the value chain? Are you into a wholesale market or are you into a retail market? And classic example, those who are from the auto component industry. Auto component industry has 2 different markets. One, when they make a sale to OEMs, original equipment manufacturers, or the vehicle manufacturers. Same part, say for example tire. When tires are sold to Tata Motors, and when the tire is sold to the retail outlet, when we buy for the replacing our tire of any vehicle, price is completely different. So are you into a wholesale or are you into a retail market? Because the auto component company can have 2 different segments. One, which they make a sale to the OEM, and another, which they take better care of the aftermarket. And aftermarket always makes more money than the OEM sale. So where you are, which part of the value chain or the supply chain are you into, that is critical to look at. Geographic market in my view is not that greatly important as far as the domestic transactions are concerned, because you will rarely find that the price varies so significantly from one state to another state or from one city to another city. It's not that important, but yes, if your particular industry, which is sensitive to the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 or tier 4 industry, please take care of it or please take a note of it. Then intangibles, especially in specified domestic transaction, either it could be technology intangible, which is in the form of technical know-how, or it could be marketing intangible in the form of the brand. You are an apparel manufacturer, but you cannot compare yourself with the Raymond, because Raymond has a great brand name compared to a normal apparel manufacturer. So because that name brand name itself will give you a better price or the premium in the marketplace. So embedded intangible or the intellectual property plays a very, very important role in terms of how a price of the product would be done or what could be the profitability. I'll give you 2 simple examples. When you go to any shop and when you want to buy a chocolate, do you say I want a chocolate now? You say I want a Cadbury, and actually you end up buying 5 star. Now this is the power of the brand. Or second good example could be, you want to take a photocopy, you go to the photocopier shop and you say give me 2 Xerox copies. Actually Xerox is the company which manufactures the photocopying machine. And incidentally the machine which is there in the photocopier could be of a Canon. So brand plays a very important role, especially in the FMCG or automotive market, or even for that matter pharma market. So where you are, if your comparables or whether you yourself are carrying a great intangibles, it is bound to affect your pricing. Then you need to compare yourself with those who are like you. Don't compare with others. A normal candy manufacturer cannot compare himself with the Cadbury. He may compare himself with the Ravalgaon. That's Ravalgaon sugar. That's the comparability which plays a very important role when you look at the comparability analysis. And the last very important, contractual terms. Because the contractual terms plays a very, very significant part in pricing of a product. I said slightly while ago, if I am offering more credit period, then my price is bound to be higher. Then when I do a cash sale, I offer him 2% discount. Why do I do that? Because I get my cash. Bird in hand is better than 2 in a bush. Right? I save on my interest cost. But if I offer you more and more in credit period, obviously I am going to charge you on a higher side. So credit terms play a very important role because such kind of an adjustment either in the price or the profits are allowed under transfer pricing. And this you can make out based on ratio analysis of the financial statements. The debtors, the inventory and the creditors you can make out. And now today with the new revised schedule 6, even the long term and the short term bifurcation is available, which was missing in the past till 2012. Then the warranty. If for a related party sale I am offering 15 months warranty, while for an unrelated party sales I am offering 30 months warranty. Now which should be having a better price? It's an unrelated party which should be having a better price because I am taking a risk of incremental 15 months. Then the warranty may come back to me, and these all are built into your cost. So when you do your transfer pricing, keep all these things in mind. And therefore, see, transfer pricing, let me tell you, there are 6 sections and the 6 rules. Now there are so many sub rules for APA and the safe harbor which has come in, but primarily 92 to 92A are the section and 10A to 10D or 10E are the rules. So what it is? Transfer pricing is more of a business case analysis and how you take your decision when you are doing your business, when you are conducting your business, and why you take such decision. That is what all about is transfer pricing. If I may say, even function asset and risk analysis is no different than this. Your comparability analysis is no different than this. This is not a rocket science at all. If you start practicing it even for 1 year, you will realize this is like anybody's game. It is, honestly speaking, I am telling you, it is anybody's game. Now, function assets risk analysis and comparability are very, very important because based on that only you will determine out of 6 methods which we have, which is the most appropriate method for you. So function asset risk analysis, comparability will lead you or take you to the next step, which is selection of the most appropriate method. And when you look at the selection of the most appropriate methods, I think this is a traditionally or internationally also, the methods are divided into 2 parts, the price methods and the profit methods. Now the word is a transfer pricing, and all of you must wonder why profit methods are also there. Because profit methods indirectly say that the price which is charged in the related party transaction, which is covered under specified domestic transaction, is at arm's length. Either you can demonstrate with the price or indirectly you can demonstrate with the profit. And therefore there are these bifurcation has been made, and if you really see even the names of them, comparable uncontrolled price, resale price, cost plus, all revolves around the price because price is very prominently coming even in the title of those methods. But when you look at the profit methods, these are known as profit split or transaction net margin method. In this both, either a profit or the margin which is being used. And there is a last method which has been introduced by the CBDT last year, which is known as any other method. Yes, it is known as any other method. So any transaction which doesn't fit into either of these 5 methods, you may resort to any other method. And actually it was good on the part of the CBDT to bring in that any other method. The reason being, if you are selling shares, from one related party to another related party. What kind of method can you use? Can you use CUP as a method? If it is a listed company, I can understand you can use that. But if it is an unlisted company, how can you use it? Can you use the resale price method? You cannot. None of the 5 methods are possible to use when you are having conversion of the debentures or the preference shares into the equity or the sale of equity or guarantee. All these you cannot do it with these 5 methods, and therefore Security has brought in the last method, which one can say very residuary method as any other method. And this is what it is. Because internationally, transfer pricing principle, including India, we rely on the OECD principles. There are few variations or I would say the exceptions from the OECD principle when India has implemented the transfer pricing, but it is by and large same as OECD, and therefore if you see all methods are just the same what OECD has prescribed and what India has. And as I said, the last method is any other method. One of the 5 to 6 methods you need to select to determine whether your price is at arm's length under domestic transfer pricing or not. That's the mandate. You cannot move beyond these 6 methods. You can justify, you can support, you can try and support why your price is by using different methods. I am in a loss, my related party is also lost. But that's the support what you can draw. You cannot justify using other than these 6 methods what you have. So these 6 methods are very critical what you need to consider, and depending upon your transaction, the type of the transaction, or depending upon the comparability what you need to choose either of these 6 methods. So what does it mean? When you select one method out of 6, you need to reject all balance 5. And you just can't say I am rejecting without giving any reason. You need to give reasons why these methods are not applicable to you. And you realize that in a later slides I am taking some examples that how you can apply some of these methods on a practical standpoint. But you need to reject. You have to justify the rejection. Why you are selecting CUP as a method, and therefore you are saying now all 5 methods I do not want to test, not allowed. Because the word is the most appropriate method. So how does this method work? CUP generally talks about the price. Resale minus, for the resale method, it talks about the profit. It's a gross margin. When you talk about a cost plus, you talk about the net profit on total cost incurred. When you talk about a profit split, it's a splitting of the profit in a value chain depending upon the contribution which is being made by either both of the related parties to a transaction. In terms of their function, asset and the risk analysis, how much money should go. That's the most complex method. It is rarely used in the marketplace. I may say 1 in a million profit split method can be used, but that's the most subjective method because it depends on the value drivers. Which value driver is contributing significantly to the profits, and that becomes subjective. I may say marketing is important, while someone says no, the manufacturing is important. That becomes a challenge. So that's the profit split method, and transaction net margin method, name itself suggests it is operating income which is compared on 3 different bases you can select on your own. One could be cost, second could be sales, or third could be your assets. Now one may wonder why asset? Cost, if I say my PBIT to cost or PBIT to sales is good, then one may wonder why it should be on the asset. Because we have a ratio called return on assets, is it not? The way we have return on equity, we have a ratio called return on asset. And to whom it is more important? It is very important for an asset or the capital intensive industries. For them, return on the cost is not very important, but the return on the assets. So for example, 5-star hotels, their investment into the plant, which is the building and the land, is significantly higher. If you see their balance sheet, more than 80% would be forming part of their land, their building and the plant and machinery. But when you look at their P&L, the P&L may not be even 1/4 size of their balance sheet. So for them, return on cost is not that important, but the return on asset, or for that matter, the steel industry, or maybe the power industry. So many capital intensive industries which are there, which you need to see, and therefore it is return on asset also is possible. So select any of that ratio, and it's very simple. Because your numerator and the denominator, The denominator cannot be the tested transaction. And what I mean by this, if I am making a sale to my related party, and my related party, and if I want to benchmark that transaction, then my profit level indicator cannot be operating profit on operating sales, because in the sales there is a sale transaction with my related party which actually is being tested for the arm's length nature. Therefore, in this case, what you need to select as a PLI is operating profit on operating cost and not on operating sales. But if it is a purchase transaction, then operating profit on operating sales would be the correct PLI. So the denominator cannot have a transaction which is tested for the arm's length test. Otherwise, you get into a circular motion. How will you justify? This is all what we have already discussed, some of the methods. Even same thing what we discussed in function asset and the risk analysis. Exactly same thing are also applicable when you are selecting the most appropriate method. When you look at the characteristics of the properties of the services, we discuss about similarity of the products. We talk about functions performed including assets and the risk, obviously the FAR. The contractual terms we discussed earlier. We discussed about the economic circumstances like extraordinary events which may happen. We talk about the business strategy. Yeah, business strategies play a very important role, because are you into a matured market or are you introducing your product into the marketplace? If you are introducing your product into the marketplace, obviously you cannot expect it to make the same level of money or the profit which a matured your comparable has been making. So make those adjustments. So business strategies, whether it's an entry strategy into the market. I was doing an audit for one of the, I won't take the name, way back in 1998, I used to do an audit of a multinational car manufacturer, and I was amazed with their pricing strategy. Their selling price was even lesser than the raw material cost. Reason, they want to penetrate the market. They were willing to take the losses. Fortunately, those days there was no transfer pricing, so they got over it up to 2001. But this is the strategy what one follows. I have another client which is into confectionery market. Their selling price is 75% of their material cost. Only 75. 25% they have to play with their gross margin, which in a confectionery industry, more than 30% of your P&L is only for your advertisement and the promotion expenses. How are they going to make money? They cannot, but they are new into the marketplace. As a result of that, these are the strategies which are being used. So when you are doing your analysis, you need to know where you are, what your company is doing. Are you into the entry strategy, market penetration strategy, or are you into a mature market? Even for a mature company, there could be an entry strategy within some geographical portion of India. I am very strong in the west and the north, but I am not strong in the south. Now I need to capture the south market. I will price it lower. Understand this. Based on that only you can determine what method you can use, or if you have information about your third party comparable, that can be very handy for making those adjustments. These are very, very critical information in a transfer pricing analysis which are required for your function assets and the risk analysis, or even for choice of the method. Very critical. Because if you select the wrong method, you have a problem. Because you can't compare. Now one will wonder whether the transfer pricing, when we have 6 methods, is there any hierarchy of the method? Or is there any choice of method? Answer is no. All 6 methods are equally important. You need to determine which is the most appropriate method for you. Because cup is the first, if you read the rules, the cup comes first, resale price comes second, cost plus comes third, profit split fifth, transaction at the profit split fourth, transaction net margin method fifth, and any other method sixth. So they are in a chronological order of 1 to 6. Does this mean there is this hierarchy? Answer is clearly no. OECD up to 2010 was having a hierarchy of method, and their preference was always for the cup. But now they have realized that such preference cannot be kept because of the paucity of information in the market. You may not get all the information every time. And therefore, Now they have come back and said ENMM is no longer a method of last resort, but it can be a preferred method. So there is no preference, there is no hierarchy. You need to select which is the best method for you. And that's what we say, that's the most appropriate method what we have in India. Out of 6, select 1, reject 5. We'll spend some more time on this. These are the 5 methods and how those are they applicable. See, basically the cup method talks about the price. And by and large, the presumption in the marketplace is cup can be easily applied for all. Rather, the cup is the most difficult method to apply. Because when you want to use a cup, there are stringent comparability norms. And what we discussed earlier, product similarity, whether in which part of the supply chain, what are your contractual terms, whether geographical presence makes difference. These are very, very critical factors which needs to be analyzed before you select cup as a method. Because product similarity, now it's very difficult to say that I manufacture the same product for an unrelated party as well as the related party. Then why I make a sale to the related party, I make a sale directly, and especially in an SDP context. In an international transaction, it is possible. I manufacture and make a sale to unrelated party in India as well as I am exporting to the related party. But in an SDP, why will I do it?